All right, everyone. After a short hiatus, we are back and better than ever. Chase is going to be joining me a little later. This is not a regular podcast and episode of Thinking Mates. This is a special edition one for my English class. And on this episode, we'll be talking about why each and every one of you should start betting on more sports games and how people who say sports gambling is bad are wrong and probably have lost when they tried to gamble in the past. Let's get to it. Alrighty, Chase, how's it going?
I'm doing all right.
You're doing all right? That's
How
good.
you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well. I'm not gonna lie. I missed the podcast.
You know, Friday recordings were tough, but I'll say the same.
I miss the listeners, and I'm sure they miss us.
The four? Yeah.
All
Probably.
four of them. Didn't we have a big North Dakota following?
I think it was Wisconsin.
It was Wisconsin. So for those of you who are listening to the first time, this is a podcast that we used to do in high school and are revamping it for one last episode here so I can get an A in my English project. And we'll kind of get right into it. This one's not going to be very long or anything like that. This one's just going to be strictly about sports betting, as that is the topic of the research that I'm doing. So, sports betting's good. I'm not going to lie. I'm going to be pretty straightforward there. Sports betting's something that's fun. You can win money off of it. You can enjoy watching others stress out while the games are going on. It makes watching games more enjoyable.
So sports betting, for one, I know it fuels our city and it helps us tremendously. And I'm not a traditional sports bettor, like per se, how you would go to the casino and bet just on a strict over-under. But I was really into the FanDuel. That was my level. That was what I was really good at.
That was one thing that I talked about in the papers and stuff like that, was how sports betting's like adaptable to society because, this is something that's very old and we've seen it change a lot over the years to fit like the mold of modern technology.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So, as we talked about, I love to sports gamble. I do it probably at least weekly, and I know that you were really into the one day and things like that, and I would just say that overall, the positives outweigh the negatives there.
I would agree. I think that there are more people probably that just enjoy it and are harmlessly doing it than people who, make it so that it shouldn't be an option for them.
Yeah. And then you have people that, that's what they do for a living, is they do sports betting and things like that. And, if anything were to ever happen to sports betting or it became illegal, it would definitely have a negative effect on the Vegas economy and just a lot of people in general.
Yeah,
one thing that's definitely, needs to be looked at is how it's changed over time with technology, like you said, with one day and being able to bet on your phone and things like that. It just shows that it's going to continue to keep growing and get more popular over time, that it's not going anywhere, and that I think it would just be easier for companies like the NFL and the NCAA and other big sports leagues to kind of work with gambling companies, FanDuel, DraftKings, William Hill, instead of just trying to get away from them altogether because of the fact that there's just so much money in it.
Yeah, of course. I think that I honestly, with the Raiders coming, it wouldn't surprise me if within 5 years you had sports books inside the stadium here in Nevada.
No, that wouldn't shock me at all. I mean, when you go to New York, or I think it was New Jersey actually, you're seeing some of that becoming possible as, sports betting's no longer just legal in Nevada, it's becoming legal other places.
Yeah.
But I mean, there definitely are some negatives to it. Addiction is a big thing. I think I'm borderline right there. Might have a minor addiction, but it's not that as much. It's the how it can lead to depression and abusing alcohol and drugs and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, I assume I like to think of it just as like someone who maybe you're on vacation and you decide to just go gamble some money for fun and it kind of gets out of hand and you walk out with nothing. You can see how that would lead to upset you.
Yeah, and I mean, so you heard there was a piece where Jim Harbaugh, who's the head coach of Michigan, was talking about how he wants to avoid gambling like the plague. He wants people to just completely get rid of it. And I understand where he's coming from, being a coach, and how there really, for him at least right now, doesn't seem to be too many benefits to sports betting. But I think that that's a bit of an over-exaggeration for sure.
For me, I don't. So I think what we have right now is pretty solid. I think it could definitely grow into a little bit more states, but like say for the states that have it, I think it's fine. I mean, if you don't want to do it, then you don't have to do it. Like that's the way with a lot of things.
That was my biggest thing is like if you look at its effect on sports, like what are some of the biggest like dark spots because of sports betting? You have Pete Rose, who all-time hit leader, can't get into the Hall of Fame now because he was betting on sports. And you have things like the 1919 Black Sox who threw the World Series, but a lot of that had to do with like mob ties and things like that. That's not as prevalent anymore.
Yeah, I don't think there's many negatives when it comes to the athletes themselves and the sports institutions themselves.
So, I mean, there's no doubt that there's some negatives, but I think they're like very few and far between, and just overall, there's too many positives to just get rid of sports betting.
Yeah, I'd agree. I don't see why. I can understand an argument of why, if it didn't exist and it was being pitched to exist now, I could see why you could argue why maybe you just wouldn't want to do that.
No, I
but
agree.
It's been around for so long, I don't see why there's any point in taking it away.
Well, and then, I during some of the research, I talked to Coach Tim, my grandpa, about it, who he's been doing this for 60-some years, something like that. So he's talked about how he's seen it change and how it's affected people's lives. And, I mean, for someone who's just been doing it so long to still continue to speak so highly of it, there's got to be some good out there, and you just don't hear too many negatives.
Yeah, I'd agree. Unless you come up with a time machine.
Yeah.
Go back and bet on I don't remember what he bet on in the movie.
Back to the Future, I don't know.
You know what I'm going with.
Yeah. And then one thing is you have companies like Barstool Sports where they're making a lot of money off sports betting because people are legitimately watching them react to live sports bets that they have going.
Yeah, he's not very good at those.
Portnoy or Marty?
I don't even know who Marty is. Portnoy is not
Marty
very great
Mush,
at those.
my guy. No,
Marty Mush, he's not Barstool, is he?
Yeah, he's Barstool.
Oh, okay. I remember seeing him on game. Back to the topic.
But no, I mean, it's an ever-changing market and industry that positively affects so many more people than it negatively affects, that doing something to it or trying to limit it or alter it or change it would just be hurtful at this point in time. Las Vegas as a whole is built around gambling and sports betting and things like that, and us two obviously being from Vegas, it would definitely do a lot of harm to the economy.
Yeah, for sure, I would think so. I think that the city's known for gambling as a whole, but I think sports betting is probably a pretty good chunk of that money that's generated also.
And other than the fact that it seems like more of a personal thing when someone loses like self-control and turns to drugs or alcohol because they're not winning or continues to bet more to get themselves out of a hole, there's no doubt that it's an issue, but it seems more of a personal issue than a widespread all gambler issue.
I don't think it's a societal problem. I think most people know when to stop, know how to control themselves. There's always going to be people out there that don't have that self-control, and that's just how life is.
But I think that people can be like that with anything. I don't think that it's necessarily a sports betting thing. I think it's just like a weakness that some people might have.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, thank you guys for listening one last time. It's been a wild and emotional ride here at Thinking Mates. You got anything to say?
I kind of want to just hear the music if you want to roll it.
All right, we'll roll the music.